Welcome to our Quick Fire Friday podcast. This is the Grow a Small Business Podcast Friday series, designed for people who need big insights in little time. In just 20 minutes each week, with no fluff, just real, proven tactics from people who know their stuff. With your hosts, Mick, AJ, and me, Rob Cameron.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Kathryn McCann, who's the General Manager of Marketing, Public Affairs and Social Impact of the Tasmania Football Club. And Kath's based in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. So thanks for your time, Kath.
Thanks, Mick. It's great to be with you.
Yes, looking forward to this chat. I guess the context obviously is the Tasmania Football Club. For those that in Australia or aware of that, it's actually a startup business. It hasn't actually sort of hit the field yet, so to speak, but 2 years in the making, albeit it's probably been 50 years coming. But it's another conversation. But I guess learning from and listening from your experience the last couple of years and how small business owners can pick up some tips and learn from a footy club. I'm big on sport and how it interrelates with business and vice versa. So for me, I guess I'm even more passionate about that context. So maybe, Kath, just to kick things off, just get us a little bit about your background and where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm a Tasmanian through and through, and I'm deeply passionate about the place that I call home. I've got a husband and 2 children here, aged 19 and 16, and have a real, focus on making Tasmania better and creating opportunities for our youth, particularly. I was a graduate of the University of Tasmania. I studied a double degree, psychology and marketing majors. And yeah, I've been fortunate to hold a number of roles here in and around Tasmania. I've worked interstate and I have travelled overseas for work, but I've had the responsibility to work particularly in the tourism and hospitality and aviation sectors in Tasmania, and with a real focus around brand, destination marketing, consumer communications, engagement, those types of areas. I'm a little bit unusual in my background in that I have ran obviously in an executive role for a number of years now. But simultaneously to that, I have sat on a number of boards. So I've effectively had a non-executive director portfolio running alongside my executive role. So a little bit unusual, a really big focus, as I said, in tourism, hospitality, aviation. I've worked in the not-for-profit sector. I've worked in government. I've worked in private enterprise. And of course, I've also worked in small business, Mick.
Yeah, so you've virtually done it all, which I think brings more to the conversation today. And I guess being so both broad and specific in what you've done, it makes for a good conversation. So I guess for context now, the football club as a startup effectively 2 years ago, how many full-time equivalents employees has it got now currently?
Well, currently we've just ticked over 30, and it really is hard to believe, Mick, that I'm telling you 30 because this time last year it was 4. And of course, I was the first full-time employee in Tasmania. I was actually appointed initially to the inaugural board, and very quickly our board recognised that we needed capacity in the business in order to get it going. So I was offered the role of executive director, which meant obviously I went into a full-time role in the organisation, and it literally started on my dining room table. That's where, the meetings and the Zoom calls and all the discussions were being had. And of course, now to see that organisation grow at the pace that we have grown has been quite an incredible journey.
So I guess starting from zero, and as you say, that's fairly rapid growth in a couple of years. So what are the sort of the first couple of steps that the business, essentially the club, took to turn the vision into something real? And what would you tell a new business owner about how to learn from that experience?
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing obviously was getting really key people and qualified people based on a skills matrix and really quite representative on the board. So I think the first learning is, making sure that you're quite considered in the people that you get involved, but also really focus in on high quality people that are going to be able to deliver on what's required. The key thing though, starting an AFL club from scratch, there's no real blueprint around how to do that. And in many respects, it's like trying to eat an elephant. And you're not sure whether to start at the tail or the trunk, or do you go for the ears, or, where do you start? And I remember people have, asked me over the journey is, how big's your whiteboard? It sort of is a good question because like any, I guess, small business or entrepreneur starting up, there's just so many things to do, and how to stay focused and navigate through that is, can be quite overwhelming, to be frank. So what we did first, from a board perspective, is we literally had our first board meeting, and we were meeting monthly, so really high cadence. But the second board meeting, we came together and we pulled together our purpose and our operating principles. And we also broke into 6, if you like, pillars or streams of work that we knew our organization was going to need to focus on. And what we did was we formulated 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month key milestones, but we kept them really simple. They were all measurable and they were real actions. So, what I would say about this work is, for me, it was my North Star in that first 12 months in the role, because it meant I knew that the board were really agreed on the purpose. Everyone was locked into that. And we had what I'd call a pretty rudimentary business plan that was really clear that I could be accountable to. And it gave me the opportunity to report and, really measure progress in a way that was, seeing us progress forward. Now, of course, actions come and went, and some things evolved and changed. But I think without doing that work really early, I would have been fairly overwhelmed and potentially even a little bit lost, because there's so much to do. And because the high profile nature of this club is everyone wanted a piece of you. I had many new friends, Mick, on LinkedIn overnight, you could imagine, and I could have taken myself down rabbit holes in all different directions. So I think probably, if I summarize, having an agreed purpose, and you don't have to overdo it. I think in that first stage is just get something down on paper. That's important. Your principles of working, and for us, that was really, really clear. And then our establishment phase business plan, which was literally a spreadsheet. It was actionable. It was almost like SMART goals, really, actually, when you think about it. It wasn't overcomplicated, but just really got us off on the right foot. And as I said, from my perspective, set a really, really clear agenda. And sometimes I think you're better off being 80% right rather than 100% wrong. And I think, getting those things down just got me away, and the board were there with me, working alongside, and we were out of the blocks.
Yeah, some nuggets of gold there, for every business owner, regardless of size, and particularly early days. Just have a plan, as you say, albeit simple. Doesn't have to be complex, and something to be accountable to. And I guess that, and sharing that sort of purpose and vision as a business, doesn't matter how many people's in it. It can certainly be so powerful, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just doing that work, and as I said, you don't need to overdo it. There's time for strategy and all those things later. But just getting those thoughts down and getting yourself with a really clear direction will get you away. And literally, we did it in one board meeting, and we didn't have much time. Like, we came together as a board in September. And it was my responsibility, alongside the directors, to launch the club in March. And there was so much that needed to be done. If we hadn't have had that plan, we just wouldn't have got there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think you mentioned helps cut through any risk of overwhelm, which in business is definitely one of the biggest challenges. And also, I think too, to what you said, it helps you avoid the sort of the bright shiny objects that in business you can get caught up on and get diverted. So yes, some great pieces of advice there. That's fantastic. So with the vision. Um, and like, you're 2 years in and you've got 30 people now. So is there anything you can share that you've done to get people in the business? And this is not just in the business too. I think in this context, the members are essentially your shareholders to some degree, aren't they?
Indeed.
Um, so has there been anything you can share that to help get people to believe in the vision?
Yeah, absolutely. From an external perspective, I think we've done something. It almost happened by accident, if I'm really honest, but we've built almost a methodology which is allowing us to really gain external feedback, but also generate engagement opportunities. So, what we did in that first year, and obviously the first focus was to launch the club, we did some quantitative survey work. So, we went out and we asked the community broadly on a range of different matters. But we then coupled that with a bit of a community roadshow, which was qualitative. So we went to communities all across the state, and we just listened and we story told, and effectively we gained data and input. And then importantly, what we did is we utilized it and we circled back. So we listened and then we implemented. And That methodology, it does a couple of things. Firstly, it was really, having the quant and then the qual was really able to validate what we were hearing through the data to ensure that it was lined up. But secondly, for me, I get really recharged up when I see and talk to consumers or customers, or in this instance, community. It's all the same principles, what we're talking about here today. And that opportunity just to really, turn up and eyeball your community and make sure what you're hearing and feeling is correct is really, really important. We've now repeated that methodology twice, and we're about to do it again. Being out in the community for our team. Now, that first time that we went to community, it was literally myself and Jack Rewalt and Alistair Nicholson and Abby Green and the team from AFL Tasmania. We didn't have much to offer, but we could listen and we could story tell. Second time around, it was, taking Brendan Gale to community across the state. It was an opportunity for him to recalibrate and to learn. And this next time, and here's, I guess, the bridge in the conversation that we're having, is we're going to be out talking about the devil's why and the devil's way, which in our terms is our purpose and values and the work that we have just done 2 years in to really do a deep strategic look at the organisation, the club, and where we're heading. So I think from my perspective, there's nothing more rewarding, but there's nothing more powerful than talking to your customers and listening. So be brave, go out and ask and hear. You don't have to do that again. It doesn't need to be a put your say into place survey that the Tasmania Football Club did. It doesn't need to be that. It could be something, that you set up yourself with SurveyMonkey, or it could be going and, meeting through small business networks and talking to customers. But really doing that has been very, very powerful for us. And it's allowed us not only, I think, to get better results in terms of what we actually have actioned, but more importantly, it's allowed us to create great engagement opportunities with our customer base, which will stand us in good stead, there's no doubt.
Yeah, that's a really good tip about listening to customers. I think sometimes business owners get too inward looking and thinking and forget about the customers, who are obviously pretty important. And I love the storytelling. I think that helps you, paint a picture and certainly, position yourself as a business in a different way. And I think more and more these days people are looking for that story, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the learnings that I've had in the last 12 months or 18 months, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But, when you make decisions, you're never going to please everyone. And that's probably another thing for small business owners. But be really focused on your target audience and understanding their needs and wants. And, when you do go to market, and if you do get some feedback, if you've got a really strong narrative that's linked to your purpose and can really demonstrate why you've done something that you have done, most reasonable people will come around with you and really open up to, oh, that's interesting. I'm now engaged and open to further conversation.
Are you a small business owner who is ready to take your professional growth to the next level? Sign up to the Grow a Small Business Weekly newsletter. This is your go-to email every Friday and will take about 2 minutes to read. Join the Grow a Small Business community who, like you, are investing in their professional development. Each week, we curate valuable resources, whether it's expert advice, books, podcasts, industry insights, or actionable strategies. We've got you covered. Leave your email at growasmallbusiness.com/weekly.
So look, every new business and business in general face moments of doubt or resistance and really, I guess, challenge business owners. So can you share a time when things felt particularly tough and how you led yourself and others through it?
Yeah, look, there's been plenty of those. I think for those that have followed the Tasmania Football Club journey, you'd be well aware of, I guess the journey that we've been on and some of the external factors that have really swirled around us from the commencement, if you like, the announcement of our provisional license to today and where we sit, less than 900 days away from first bounce. There's a couple of things for me. The first one is our chair, Grant O'Brien, is an exceptional person. And I've known from the start that Grant's got my back and that we are locked in. And I think having someone, whether it's a mentor or a colleague or someone that you work with, and probably Mick, your business, providing support to small business owners and entrepreneurs, but knowing that you've got someone that you can really lock in with, I think that is really important and incredibly useful. So there have been times where we've had some really tough days, and I've always known that Grant was there for me and for the club. But I also knew before those days that we were on the same page and that we could stay the course. So that's been really helpful. The other couple of things that I would raise, I mean, from the work that we're doing is, it's high profile. So we see it as a privilege, and it's got, a lot of responsibility that comes with it, but it means a lot to a lot of people. And not all small business will have that amount of sort of external noise, but there'll be something special that you're doing. And we know that when we get a reaction, it's because people do care, and that's a good thing. And we're very lucky. Imagine what it's going to be like when we lose our first game. But what we try to do as an organisation, and Brendan Gale, our CEO, and many of your listeners would know Brendan, is really be focused on how do we absorb the pressure. So, when you're in those situations, one thing that, and I know Brendan and I spoke about this on a number of occasions, is really being present in yourself. So thinking about, when the pressure comes on, how you're absorbing it and how you're actually reacting physiologically, importantly, emotionally, importantly, but really behaviorally. And so I think in those moments of high pressure and stress is really kind of looking inward and going, okay, well, where am I at my best? What can I learn here from how I might be reacting in a situation? And that's been something that I've been really acutely mindful for myself over this period. And it's over this last couple of years particularly, and it's a tremendous opportunity for growth. And no doubt many of your listeners here would have experienced those moments, but we often forget to look inwards at those times. We're so focused on everything outwards. In terms of, I guess, starting this club from scratch and the journey that we've been on, I said it earlier, we're in a really interesting situation, and some of the key things that we're dependent upon are outside of our control. And so there's so much you can do in terms of influencing and trying to communicate and educate and bring stakeholders on the journey. But sometimes you've just got to focus on what you can control. And I'm sure many of your listeners here, sometimes you've got to just recalibrate back and say, well, let's control the controllables. What are the things that I can actually control? And how do I make sure I do that really, really well? We've been very, very focused on making sure that everything we do well. We do with great purpose. We do with, great rational decision making, and we execute well. And if that happens, then the other things should start working themselves out around you. But they're probably just a few key tips for me. There have been moments where the days have been hard, and no doubt some of your listeners here would absolutely have experienced that in starting a small business. But I think from my end, if you can have good people around you, and it doesn't need to be multiple, it could just be one. If you really can be present in yourself and learn and grow and control the controllables, then they're probably a few tips that I would give to get you through those times.
Yeah, fantastic advice. And like you say, having people external, but mentors, coaches, even internally as you've had, is so important when things get tough, because it can be a lonely world in the small business world. So it's leveraging those sort of contacts and people so important. So thanks for those good pieces of advice. So you touched on this earlier, and new businesses in the first couple of years often wrestle with how much structure to put in place. So what balance did you strike between, getting governance and systems right versus just moving fast as the business has done the first 2 years?
Yeah, this is really hard, and I think this is the one that probably makes, particularly for those with governance responsibilities, quite uncomfortable. And the thing for me is, I've often used the word in our business in the club, not yet. And it's that constant balance around, speed and structure and right sizing. So there's lots of things we've got to do, but some of it's just got to be not yet. And this is kind of the balance. And, it's hard to bat things away, particularly as you said earlier, if they're shiny. So this whole balance between structure and speed is probably the thing that would be most unsettling for me over the last couple of years, particularly, when you've got fiduciary responsibilities and you've got, requirements, and in our instance, high profile. So getting that right sized has been a constant recalibration. And I think, even in just saying that out loud, you have to get comfortable with that. If you can't get comfortable with that, it's probably going to be a problem for you. And you're probably going to end up either overplaying the speed or overplaying the structure. And really, in order to move forward, you've got to get the balance right between those two things. So from my perspective, some of the things that we've worked on is obviously working with the board on a real evolutionary establishment phase approach. And that means really picking off the key priorities and making sure, as I say, they're right sized or fit for purpose at the right stage of the journey. If we had a sort of overgoverned that side of the organisation, the club wouldn't have launched. We couldn't have got out of the ground. We just wouldn't have been able to get it done. So making sure that balance has been correct. One of the key things that I'd probably say to your listeners is really thinking about your risk appetite, because we all do have different risk appetites. But I think thinking that through and being really clear on, how uncomfortable are you prepared to be is really quite important. In terms of just probably finishing or rounding out this question, because it's one that I could talk about, having sat particularly as an executive director, which is a unique role, as many of your listeners would know. It's one that I have grappled with. But the thing that has been key has been that establishment phase business plan for me. So as soon as you get that written down and you get a good plan and framework in place, including, your governance framework that sits within, deliverables. So, setting up your risk register, getting your finance risk and audit committee, or, whatever your governance matters are in there as actions, then I feel that you can get moving on this one. But you can analysis paralysis. We probably talked about that. You can find yourself, if you overplay one side, it could be problematic. And I think that's just a constant recalibration to make sure that you're moving, but at the same time, you've got good structures around you to protect you and the organisation, and that you just constantly, I guess, recalibrating and readjusting as the organisation grows and evolves.
Yeah, you certainly got to be conscious of that. And it's obviously being agile and adaptable in business these days, to your point. So, look, Kath, we could talk for a lot longer. Unfortunately, we're going to wind it up. So we like to finish up our Quick Fire Fridays with sharing one thing you'd suggest to our listeners do in their business after listening to to our chat.
I think the engagement piece for me has been key. So, getting out and engaging, talking to your customers, stakeholders. You can't talk to everyone, I know that, but it is really important to get out and really develop your relationships and your network. And obviously the work that you're doing, not just through the pod, but the events that this organisation holds and facilitates, I just think they're so important. And I sort of look back to the growth of the footy club and, that external facing piece, developing those relationships, gaining trust with others, and ultimately for us, creating a customer base. We've got nearly 215,000 founding members now. It can't be done without looking outwards. So don't underestimate engagement. Probably don't spend all your time doing it. Be selective and be purposeful, be deliberate in what you do, but make sure you spend some time looking out. It'll be really important, and I think will be of great benefit as you grow the organisation.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kath. It's been a great chat. There's been so much great stuff that our listeners should have to take away from this for their business. So I really appreciate it. Well done to everybody involved with the footy club and where you've got to so far. And we really hope it keeps moving forward. And we, as you say, it's only 900 days to the first pound. So yes, it can't come quick enough.
Thanks so much. And no doubt there's plenty of founding members on listening into the pod. So thank you to all of those as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Want to help other small business owners improve their business? There's one quick thing you can do, which is jump over to iTunes and leave a review. Or if you don't have an account, follow us on Spotify.